You know, heading into 2026, the entire global energy market was getting ready for, well, an oil glut. A record surplus was on the horizon. But then, in just a matter of days, everything got flipped on its head by a single geopolitical event that sent the world spiraling into its biggest energy crisis in decades. So, let's break down exactly what happened.
And I mean, look at how fast this all went down. It was dizzying. On February 28th, a military strike kicks the whole thing off. The very same day, Iran hits back by shutting down the world's most critical energy highway. And by the time we're 72 hours in, the markets are in an absolute panic. It's just a perfect snapshot of how a regional conflict can go global in the blink of an eye.
All right, so how did we get here? Let's dig into the initial event, the military action that basically lit the fuse on this whole thing.
So it starts on February 28th. The US and Israel launched these coordinated strikes against military sites in Iran. But the real game changer was the outcome, the death of Iran's supreme leader. Now that escalated things immediately. This wasn't just a military strike anymore. It was a direct challenge to the entire regime.
And Iran did not wait. The response was immediate, and it came in two parts. First, they launched missile attacks. But second, and this is the part that really mattered for the global economy, the Revolutionary Guard issued a very clear warning to all ships: stay away from the Strait of Hormuz. They didn't just make a threat, they slammed the door shut on the world's most important energy waterway.
And that warning, it leads us right to the absolute heart of this whole crisis, the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, how can one little strip of water have the power to basically hold the entire global economy hostage?
Well, when we say narrow, we mean narrow. At its tightest spot, it's just 21 miles wide. That's not an ocean, it's a bottleneck, a tiny gap. But the amount of energy that has to squeeze through there every single day, it's truly staggering. Let's get into the numbers because they're pretty mind-blowing.
20%. Just let that sink in for a second. 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil consumed anywhere in the world every single day has to pass through this one little choke point. We're talking millions and millions of barrels from huge producers like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iraq. So when that route gets blocked, poof, that oil is just gone from the market.
And if you thought that was bad, it gets worse, because it's not just about oil. Incredibly, that same number, 20%, also applies to the world's supply of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. So you've got this 1-2 punch hitting the market, a crisis for oil and a crisis for gas, all at the same time. And the gas market, as we're about to see, reacted even more violently.
So let's talk oil prices. Because to really get why everyone freaked out, you have to understand what the world looked like just moments before this all kicked off. And let me tell you, it was the complete opposite of what you'd expect.
Before this crisis, the International Energy Agency was actually warning everyone about an oil glut. They were worried there was too much oil, that prices were going to crash. And then, bam, literally overnight, the ships stopped moving through the strait. All that talk of a surplus, it just vanished, replaced with this absolute terror of a crippling shortage.
And the market's reaction was, well, exactly what you'd expect. It was immediate. Prices just surged. This headline from Reuters on March 1st really says it all. You can see that analysts weren't just reacting to the initial 10% jump. They were already looking down the road and seeing a $100 barrel of oil if this didn't get resolved, and fast.
Now you might be asking, what about OPEC+? And yeah, they did try to step in. A key group of members said they'd pump an extra 206,000 barrels a day, but honestly, analysts just kind of shrugged. Why? Because the problem wasn't a lack of production, it was a lack of transportation. Pumping more oil doesn't help if you can't get it on a boat. It was a logistics problem, and that extra 200,000 barrels was just a drop in the bucket compared to the millions that were now stuck.
As wild as things were in the oil market, believe it or not, the shock to the natural gas market was even more severe. We are talking about a total, unprecedented blackout of a critical supply source. Let's break down why.
So here's the absolute killer detail. Qatar, one of the world's biggest exporters of LNG, just shut everything down. This wasn't a slowdown, it was a full stop. Lights out. And just like that, with one single event, about 20% of the entire world's ability to export LNG just vanished. It's almost impossible to overstate how big of a deal that is. If you want some perspective, think about this. Remember all the gas that Europe lost from Russia starting back in 2021? It took years of scrambling and making new deals to replace that volume. Well, this single event took a comparable amount of gas off the global market, but it did it almost instantly. What took years to unfold before happened here in a day.
And you can see the impact right here on this chart. European gas prices were sitting comfortably around €32 on February 27th. Just a few days later, by March 2nd, they've shot past €50. That's more than a 50% jump in no time. And the projections showed that if the blockade lasted 3 months, prices could soar past €90, almost triple the pre-crisis cost.
So this is way more than just a story about numbers on a screen. When the price of energy, the thing that powers literally everything, skyrockets like this, the ripple effects are felt everywhere. Let's look at the wider economic damage.
The worries were coming from all sides. First, the obvious one, inflation. Higher energy costs mean higher prices for everything, which threatens to push energy-importing countries into recession. Then there's the logistical nightmare. Companies are getting into these insane bidding wars just to find a tanker. And insurance? To ship anywhere near the region? It's gone through the roof, which adds costs to all global trade. And finally, this is forcing every country to have a long, hard look at where its energy really comes from.
Ultimately, what this crisis really did was pull back the curtain and show just how fragile our global energy system actually is. It proved that a single geopolitical flare-up can completely override all the market forecasts. And that leaves us with this one huge unanswered question that everyone is now wrestling with. Was this just a temporary shock we can bounce back from, or did the whole game of energy security just change for good?
Thank you for watching. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video.